Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today, Seabass of WNWS of Jackson, Tennessee. This podcast episode presented by Wellspire, Nashville's Learning and Development Center. Wellspire offers personal and professional development opportunities in a beautiful facility in the Gulch neighborhood. Stop by for an event with world-renowned speakers or host an off-site event that will wow your team or your clients. We thank our co-presenting sponsor, the Well Coffee House, which turns coffee into water and has a mission to bring clean water to the world. Our news presented by Sutherland and Belk, an SEC sports-loving injury firm in Nashville. Taylor and Russell will shoot you straight on your rights and options when you have been injured in an accident. Call them at 615-846-6200 to get your questions answered. You may also visit them online at sbinjurylaw.com. Well, the NFL draft starts Thursday night, runs through Saturday. Watch to see some combination of Ke'Shawn Vaughn, Kalijah Lipscomb, and Jared Pinkney come off the board. The guest line, presented by Boll & Branch, started by Vanderbilt graduates Scott and Missy Tannen. Had no clue how comfortable Boll & Branch sheets were until I got them. They are fair trade certified, meaning they are made under safe conditions by men and women, treated and paid fairly. Try them free for a month. You can return them, but you won't want to. Once you get the sheets, try the mattress. That was voted the best mattress of 2018. Go to bollandbranch.com, enter the promo code Vandy, and get $50 off your first set of sheets. Seabass is with us from WNWS in Jackson, Tennessee. We are doing this episode on the afternoon of Thursday, April the 23rd. The NFL Draft will kick off a few hours from now. I'm excited. I know you are incredibly excited. And with that, welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I guess it's okay, man. I don't get all that far into it. Like a colleague of mine that I used to do a show with said today, I can just look in the paper and see who picked who. Can you believe that?
Because I know who you're talking about, I can believe it. But
I'll look in the paper and see who took who. Man, this is one of, not only because everybody needs this, but this is my number one sporting event of the year every single year. This is my Graceland, sir.
People actually look in the paper for draft results? I mean, couldn't you look online first?
Man, I have no idea because I can't even think. I can't even act. I mean, I can't imagine not watching every pick. Chris, when I tell you, I watch every pick.
Who's your favorite Mr. Irrelevant ever?
It's going to be between one of two people. One, because one of them was my Colts, though he didn't do anything. Chandler Harnish, remember him out of Northern Illinois?
I have to admit, I do not.
The quarterback. Matter of fact, since Andrew Luck was drafted, he's the only quarterback the Colts have drafted since Andrew Luck was Chandler Harnish, Mr. Irrelevant, back in 2015, I think. And I guess the other one would be, for me, probably Cat, who was in your neck of the woods till recently, Ryan Suckup.
Yeah. That was mine. Probably worth the pick. Kickers, I did a study on a few years back, though. The ones, and this has been 5 or 6 years, but I did a sample size for all the guys who were in the league. I was doing some draft work for Corey Chavis at the time, and I think the ones who were undrafted actually outperformed the kickers who were drafted. So it's not exactly a case to draft a kicker.
That.
But, hey, speaking of which, you don't subscribe to The Athletic, do you?
I do not.
They had a great article on Sebastian Janikowski that if you're an Athletic subscriber, I would say you should read it because it was incredibly entertaining. It was about the Raiders taking him in the first round.
Which is, now, I mean, don't get me wrong. He was probably, because of the way they used to draft, that was, I'll say this. It's probably one of the best first-round picks they've ever had. But I don't care how good a kicker is. Yeah, you just don't do it. You just can't do it. You cannot do it. I don't care if he was, what kind of foot he had, how bad you needed one. You just can't do it. And they did, and only Al Davis would have done that, And this is a team who had some track records for some hideous picks. But even though he panned out in a big way, still wasn't value. the complete antithesis of value.
Well, it was an interesting story. I won't spoil it for the people who have not read it. I hope you will. But let's talk NFL draft and Vanderbilt.
Sure.
Where do you see the big three landing and when?
Now, who in the world knows? When, there are some that have Ke'Shawn Vaughn on the outskirts, or the back end of the top 10 in regards to running backs in this draft. I've even seen a couple of guys ahead of him that I don't agree with. I mean, I've seen as late as today where Antonio Gibson was rated ahead of him. And don't get me wrong, I think Antonio Gibson is special, but that's a very small sample size. Ke'Shawn Vaughn is to me, it's clearly, of course, and I guess it depends on what you're looking for as a running back, and there's some people that think that Antonio Gibson can even play receiver, but when the totality of it all, I mean, and again, it depends on where you're going, but I think Vaughn's a totally better prospect. I don't think he goes. Of course, he's not going tonight. I don't think that he goes tomorrow either. I think that he goes in the fourth round, probably somewhere near the end of it. So I'm going to say back half of the fourth, early fifth round, and I think that he could be a very good compliment to several different franchises and their backs out there. I had Mike Keith on last Saturday morning, and yeah, he loved the idea of Ke'Shawn Vaughn backing up Derrick Henry in in Tennessee. I mean, that would be you imagine that, Chris, from Derrick Henry to Ke'Shawn Vaughn?
Would love it.
That would be. And think about this. If and the Titans look, I think the Titans either go and Mike agreed with me. This is best available tackle at that point. Or let me say this: if Josh Jones is still around, I don't think you reach on a tackle, but if by some reason someone like him is still around, I mean, I think you pounce on that. I like Dennis Kelly, and I think he's serviceable, but he's a swing guy. I mean, he's a filler and a good one. There's no doubt about that. But that's his role. But if you could get a guy like Josh Jones, I mean, I think he's left tackle capability. Of course, I mean, that's already taken care of with Taylor Lewan. But if you could have Lewan and Jones going forward as your tackles, I think they'd be great book tackles, man. That'd be the ideal situation. And then if they don't go there, I think clearly cornerback is the other need.
I'm going to go Vaughn round 5, Pinckney round 6, Lipscomb round 7. You buying it?
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. I'm either 4, 6, 7 or 5, 6, 7. And I'll say this: I think somebody will at that point in the fourth round, he's going to clearly be one of the 2 or 3 best running backs left on the board. I think at that point, him, guys like Benjamin, Antonio Gibson, guys like that. And I think somebody makes the move somewhere in the later stages of the fourth round. So we're real close. I'm going 4, 6, 7.
I am not a draft expert or a talent evaluator. I still can't for the life understand how he is that lowly regarded by the NFL. I mean, I look at his career. You take him, you take DeAndre Swift. Who had the better career, especially considering the circumstances? I mean, to me, it's Vaughn. Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy, but here's what I'll say to you. I'm going to revert back to that conversation that I had Saturday with Mike Keith again, and we were talking about those 2 particular players. And the way that I phrased it was this, and I think, and you're a numbers guy and you're an analytical guy, so I know you'll understand what I mean. Is DeAndre Swift a better running back prospect than Ke'Shawn Vaughn? Yes, clearly yes. The answer is yes to that. But is DeAndre Swift in the first round, does that constitute more value than Ke'Shawn Vaughn in the fourth round? And I think the answer is no. I think the gap between those two is not so great that you can't address another need outside of something like running back in the first round. That gap is not that far apart. It's just not.
Oh, I'm completely with you. I mean, the injury thing does concern me. But that is a dude. I mean, you look at his life now. Okay, he's married. He's got a young kid. He's always been a guy who has carried a chip on his shoulder. I mean, he came back to Vanderbilt. One of the things he was looking to do was get his degree, which a lot of people thought would never happen. And he got an internship, I think, in finance or something like that, because he's already got his eye on what he is going to do after football. 10 times out of 10, I will take a guy like that who's kind of got a plan and is goal oriented and driven rather than the guy who's just floating through life hoping to God he passes the drug test. And by the way, none of that is meant towards Swift at all. I'm not saying any of that is true about Swift, but I'm just saying for Ke'Shawn Vaughn, and you know how a lot of this is in the NFL. These guys are talented, but a lot of times directionless. I like that about him on top of the skill set.
Yeah, me too, man. And I was just sitting here thinking about. I mean, seriously, if you make me pick somebody to where he could go, I don't think there's a better situation than right there in Nashville, Chris. And not just because he's prepped there and played there in college. I mean, that's great, and that'd be, I think that'd certainly help him out a little bit, especially with a family now, and you wouldn't have to uproot him. But I think he'd fit that offense pretty well. And I'm gonna throw a player comp out there, and of course, you know how those go. I mean, they're very subjective. But you know what I kind of think of when I think of Key. See if you can feel me at all here. I look at Key as a poor man's version of Frank Gore.
Oh boy, man! The thing about Gore. Is now that he's 81 years old, I can't remember as much. Like your memory of a guy sometimes the last thing you saw, you just think is Gore is the guy that defies Father Time. You don't remember him for what he was and the explosiveness and stuff that came with him, if that makes sense. So, I mean, yeah, I could buy it.
Back in the day.
Well, although...
Yeah, Frank was a moose.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing with Ke'Shawn, okay... You talked about him as the Titans, that being a fit there. Well, the Titans sort of need a quote-unquote third down back, although Henry's kind of an every down back, but in that role, right, because Dion Lewis is gone. He was never that at Vandy, but my goodness, when you got the ball in his hands on a screen pass, it was terrifying if you're a defense because he could take it to the house from any spot on the field. And I'm just thinking there is a chance to use him in that capacity in the league, and that also limits the pounding he's going to take, which is one of the big question marks to begin with. And there's a ton of things I don't understand about last year, but for the life of me, why they did not get him the ball more on screens like the one that he took to the house against Florida as a junior is beyond me.
Yeah, look, that's your statement is true. He wasn't that, but that doesn't mean that he isn't that. I mean, because he can't. He absolutely can be, in every sense of the word. We just didn't.
Think about this for a minute.
I know what you're saying, but I think about it put it like this: if he doesn't have that, that's one thing. But you can clearly see in the small sample size that when they did do it, what he was able to do as a result. So to me, that's about. Hello?
Your connection went bad for a minute, but I'm still here.
I can see that happening. My internet is crap these last 2 weeks, I'm telling you.
Yes, I can tell on my end, but we will get through this. Well, what I was saying is that, yeah, you just said exactly what I was thinking. You might have said it better than I meant, but I mean, I think that he's got that kind of capability. Okay, think back to this, okay? Before we knew what Ke'Shawn Vaughn was at Vanderbilt, do you remember what the knock on him was?
Well, I remember that I know it was either the reps or the production went down in his second year there in Illinois, if I remember correctly, but I don't remember what the situation was.
Well, the production and the reps went down because he wasn't on the field almost at all. Coach's decision, maybe he had some to blame for that, but I tend to, looking back at that Illinois staff and Lovie Smith, I tend to think that was more on them than on Ke'Shawn. Who knows? That's not what is really important
and
anyway.
maybe he wanted to go home.
Well,
Maybe he just wanted to be home.
Maybe so. But what I was getting, the knock on him was ball security, that he was fumble prone. I mean, I'm thinking off the top of my head, he might have lost one fumble in 2 years at Vandy.
Chris, he's the best back we've ever had.
Hands down. I mean, it would be.
He just is.
He's better than Webb. He's better than Stacy. I mean, it would be back to Frank Mordica, who I saw as a kid, but I was a little kid. And my memory of that, I mean, I'm just not equipped to make a judgment, but he was the best back I've covered, hands down. And I think between that, and I don't remember him dropping a lot of passes either. Do you?
No, but it's just because I don't remember seeing a lot of passes, to be honest with you. But yeah, I mean, he just had something else that nobody else that we've ever had has had. I mean, we've had talented guys. I would have loved to have seen, a full career of somebody like Raymond Perkins. I mean, he was an extremely talented young man, but it was the sample size was so small. Key had 2 outstanding years of production, and I love everything about that dude's game. He plays with an edge and he plays with a chip, and every time that he had the football in his hand, we wouldn't have the greatest offensive line, but every time he had that ball in his hands, you had a chance. He had a shot to bust something big, and you knew it. I think about, was it either the first play of the game or one of the very first plays of the game against LSU? I'm sure you remember what I'm talking about. In fact, Vanderbilt ended up scoring first, but if I remember correctly, it was one of the first 2 or 3 plays and a big explosive run by Key off the right side that that resulted in our first touchdown, and we had the lead against the national champions.
Yeah, he got them into the red zone, I think maybe even inside the 10. But I want to take a detour for a second, and then I think I'm going to go to the mailbag pretty quickly because there's a ton of good questions that I want us to tackle. But, and this is where memory fades too, but if Warren Norman keeps 2 healthy knees, where does he rank on that list of the best backs you saw at Vandy? How does that career look like? What does the stat line look like when he's done?
There's two guys that I had wished that they had been able to stay healthy, all the way through or whatever. And I'd like to just seen, I think the first one is the one that you mentioned, and he was the more talented of the 2, I think. I think he had a chance to really be good, Chris. I really do. I don't think he was Key good, but I think he had a chance to be really good. And then the other guy, and, of course, it's a little bit sketchy because it's been a long time ago, but I remember thinking he had a pretty decent skill set, was Lou Thomas. Do I have another faulty internet connection?
Well, no, you do not. I actually left my chair to get a couple of media guides because I wanted to look something up. Yeah, Lou Thomas he had a really good half of a season. And this was before I was covering, but that would have been 98.
And I'm trying to remember something about Lou. I don't remember. For some reason, this is cropping up, and some of the old gangsters will have to help. Was he committed to Clemson at one time?
That is what I was thinking.
It seems like there was a connection between Thompson, committed to Clemson and decommitted and went to Vanderbilt or something like that. Did he transfer from Clemson? I don't.
No, I think he was committed and came straight to Vandy.
He was committed to Clemson, but came here?
That is the way I remember it. I might be wrong. Again, that was before I was actually covering the team. So.
Yeah, I mean, Clemson wasn't exactly doing what they're doing now, but still, every time I think about Lou, I always think about Clemson for some reason, and I can't exactly remember why.
Well, he did pan out better than Andrew Diamande.
What about, did he pan out better than Chris Matasic?
Chris Matasic never transferred from Clemson, so please try to stay in the family of the conversation here. Wisconsin.
The pride of Cudahy, Wisconsin.
Holy cow, how do we remember this stuff?
Because what else are we going to do?
What I'm doing, give me a second. I'm trying to grab a couple of old media guides because I want to look through that signing class that they got Norman in for just a minute.
So if you want to, while you're doing that, do you want me to tell the listeners a story or something?
Go for it. It won't take me long, so make it short.
Okay, so I've been bitten twice by a dog in my life. The first time I got bit by a little dog, and my great-grandfather's walking, and some little punk dog came up behind me and bit me on the, what do you call that, on the back of your ankle. What do you call that? Achilles heel. The second time I got bit by a dog was about 5 years ago. Man, it's 4-man. We're playing volleyball. You know, I play ball. It's 4-man outdoor on the beach, hot as a dog, 100 degrees outside. And this lovely gal named Amanda, she got this puppy dog. He's about a year old. It's a Great Dane named Rocky. That's my homeboy. Well, Rocky was drinking in his water dish. It was really hot. I'm coming off the court, man, and I grab my shirt, which is in the fence link, to wipe my eyes off because I can hardly see between the sweat and the sand. Well, I go to reach for my shirt, and it was in the fence right next to Rocky's water dish. And so even though he was my boy, he thought I was going to take his water dish, and I got bit on the volleyball court by a Great Dane. And that's the end of the story.
Not bad on the spur of the moment. Okay,
Thank you.
Found the class that Norman was in. That would have been the 09 class. Wasn't quite as good as I thought, top to bottom. But here's kids who were in that class. The ones that I'd say were the most productive. Wesley Johnson, Javon Marshall, Walker May, Warren Norman, Zach Stacy, Wesley Tate, Trey Wilson. It's not a bad class. You actually had...
That's very productive.
You had 2 all-SEC level players, and Stacy, I don't know if Stacy ever made it, but he was that level player. And, of course, Wes Johnson, who started every game for them after a redshirt year at left tackle, I think. I don't know if all of them were at left tackle, but he started 51 games. Marshall was a decent player, started a few years. Walker May was a nice... rush in spots, not like an every down guy, but a guy that contributed. Norman, we talked about. You had some busts in that class. Brady Brown, Charlie Goro, Colin Ashley, Mylan Brown. But that's, Trey Wilson was a nice player.
Charlie Goro.
Did you realize, and I only know this because I was looking through the record books a lot as I do the Vandy Sports 100. Trey Wilson had 4 pick sixes in his career. 4.
From Trey played at Evangel, if I remember, at Evangel Christian out of Shreveport.
I think that's right. It was Louisiana for sure.
Yeah. He turned out to be a really good player. Yeah, I like Trey Wilson.
Yeah, 4. I think had 6 picks in his career and 4 went for scores, which is crazy.
Yeah. I like Trey a lot. I liked Trey a lot. I did.
Yeah, it was Evangel. So you're right. Well, sorry for that. I wanted to look that up because I remembered Norman was in a pretty good signing class, and I knew Stacy was in it, but I couldn't remember exactly who. I remember that because that was the class that they pointed to as sort of the one that they could maybe use to turn the program around, but it was coming off the Music City Bowl at the time.
I know we got to get to the mailbag, but do me a one player. Just appease me. You got that media guide with you?
I do. Right, what you need to know?
I want you pick 3 players from from that class, and I'm going to see if I can get the state. Just random players. Let me see if I can get the state.
Okay, this one will be easy. Thad McCaney. You even remember Thad McCaney?
Brentwood Academy.
Yep, good. Okay, Blake Sutherland.
Yeah. It was Brentwood Academy, right?
Yeah, it was Brentwood Academy. Correct. I think our internet connection crapped out for a minute.
Okay.
Blake Sutherland.
He played at Greater Atlanta Christian, I believe.
Yeah, who did they just get from GAC? They just got a commitment like within the last few months from GAC, didn't they? Or a signee?
I mean, wasn't that where who's the big guy? God, I just went blank. Our tackle that just transferred to Georgia Tech.
Yeah, that's who it was. Devin Cochran. That's what it was. That's why that's on my mind.
Devin Cochran.
I don't even, honest to God, I don't even remember Blake Sutherland. Like I do now that I'm looking at this.
Decommitted. I thought he decommitted or he left.
He might have.
I think he left.
Okay. Last
He made it to campus.
Let's see. Mason Johnston, another one that I've almost totally forgotten.
Mason Johnston, was he a tight end?
Yes.
Was he out of Florida?
Right state. See if you can tell me where. I can give you one. I could give you two hints, but it would give it away.
I want to say he played at the Bowles program.
You have nailed it. The alma mater of Chipper Jones, and also who was that running back that came to Vandy from there?
His name was like, it's not. I know it's not Jack Van Valkenburg or something like that.
Samsonite.
He was really built. I mean, he was a ripped dude. It was like Jack. It's like Van Valkenburg or something like that.
I would know it if you hadn't messed me up here, because Ryan Van Rensburg. That's it.
Ryan Van Rensburg. That's right. I don't know why I was calling him Jack, man. I can't believe I got the Mason Johnson one, man. Hey, bring it on, y'all. Just bring it on, man. I can't believe I remember that.
I can, because I know you. But let's go to the mailbag, shall we?
Yeah, come on.
The mailbag is sponsored by Vanderbilt fan and independent insurance agent Josh Minton of Brentwood. If you need home, auto, motorcycle, renters, landlord, life, or commercial insurance, Josh is the guy to contact. Please call him at 615-933-1979. Email him at josh@hqinsurance.com. Follow him on Facebook at JD Minton HQ. He is my insurance agent. Give him a try. Tell him you heard about it on the podcast, and I think you will be pleased. Mr. Vandy says, what did you think of the football and basketball commitments this week?
Well, first you want to start with the football one? Man, Treon Surgic, man, Chris, that makes me so happy. Not just the offer list. I mean, we love the offer list, clearly. That's one of the biggest gauges and probably the biggest one. But we just haven't gotten guys like this, Chris. I mean, you know what? And I promise I'm not taking too much of that baby fat off of him. You know, I'll trim him up a little bit, man. But look how quick he already is off the ball. I mean, think about that. He is so quick and powerful off the ball. What is he sitting about 6'2"? You know, I mean, the motor is relentless. This is a big time get. Our guy, you and I both done radio with him. Coach Javon Hay, man. Well, he's making you listen to these cats talk, and they keep mentioning his name. How much they like him. And I'm telling you, I know Jordan Butler backed out and went to Northwestern, but think about this, Chris, just in the last couple of years with the transfers and the signings, but the Davion Davises, the Derek Greens, you know, guys like that. And now Tyrion Surgic and hey, you know, I even mentioned on the board the other day, you know, Rutgers starting to take that turn towards what we're looking for, you know, and then, you know, I'll just say this. They still got to do it, but from a blueprint or at least from a stuff standpoint, some of these last couple of classes and of course with the transfer, at least from a potential standpoint, it has guys that we just generally don't get. And finding true SEC level defensive tackles, three techniques, guys like that are very hard for us to score. You know, they just don't happen very often, almost never. And we're starting to get them every now and then and have serious interest in them. And you got to think that Javon Hayes is a big part of that.
Two things we know about Javon. He's likable because you know I've been around him a lot. And two is cool, Javon is not lazy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, not by any stretch of the imagination, and so I love the football side of it. And I'm sorry, I can't pronounce King's name. I don't know how you say it on the basketball side of things. I'll tell you this, a couple things stick out, of the film that I've had a chance to watch, and that is just what it is. But I mean, still developing a shot that's clear. I don't think this is a guy that you can get in the paint and he's going to shoot 10 footers, with regularity, and maybe his offensive game develops, but he attacks the rim, runs the court in transition fantastically, defends the rim, seems to be a pretty smart young man. And again, is really just learning the game. I think this is a guy I think physically can contribute right away. You like, the build is there, so you add a little strength. I think it's there already. Athleticism. We need a true rim protector. But the fact that he runs the court in transition at his size the way he does, I love to see that. I'm not interested in who did or didn't offer him. It's about what fits you. And there's not really anybody on our roster that he reminds me of, Chris. And we need to mix some things up there. And he seems to be pretty unique for me. It's an in-state get. You and I were talking about that the other day when the last time, because I don't know if we're ever going to get another football commitment in the state of Tennessee. So we may have to just do it in basketball. And you and I talked about it the other day. It seemed like it had been years and years since they had one. That's a great score. And going into Knoxville to a program like Catholic, who beat a very good Briarcrest team for the state championship last month, I like it. There's not much not to like about it.
Yeah, we talked about the lack of Knoxville area kids outside of baseball, and this came up on the board. In fact, it may have been a question in the mailbag, and I forgot to put it down. So I'll ask the ones that I think about from that area. Ke'Shawn Jackson Garrison out of which? Did he go to Central? Okay. Yeah, you had Jeff Jennings out of Dandridge, Jefferson City, which is close. It's kind of
they were the same class, too, if I remember correctly.
Jeff Jennings, I think, was the first Vanderbilt commitment I ever spoke with in my role at the site. So I remember him well.
Really?
Yeah.
I want to say those two were in the same class, if I remember correctly. They came in together, if I remember right.
Yeah, and Jeff, I want to say, had some injuries. Like, he was more valuable, I think, at the start of his career than at the back end of it. Did he move to linebacker at Vandy at some point?
Linebacker. Yeah, I think that he moved from one side of the ball to the other, and that sounds right. I want to say he started out at running back and moved to linebacker. My memory may be sketchy on that, but I do believe he did make that transition.
They had to hold him off out of high school because he was the first commitment in that class, I remember. And Auburn started recruiting him and wanted him at linebacker, and Vanderbilt promised, we will leave you at running back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wish I could remember, but I'm sorry, I don't. And I saw that question. I perused the mailbag yesterday. I hardly ever get a chance to do that, but I saw that they were asking. And of course, the other player from the area, don't you?
Jay Fishester, if you want to go back a long time.
Well, I don't want to go. I don't have to go nearly that far. This guy made one of the biggest plays for Vanderbilt fans and football-wise in a long, long, long time. And this was fairly recently.
I've drawn a complete blank.
Won a huge game on the road in the SEC in his own backyard.
Well, we already said Ke'Shawn Jackson Garrison, so I know it's not him.
No?
I've drawn a blank.
No, he wasn't a running back. He made one of the coolest trick plays, faking a throw, the jump in the air, getting the man
Patton
in the air.
Robinette, of course, Maryville.
Patton Robinette from Maryville, that's right. Patton Robinette.
They had I want to say they had a lineman 8 or 9 years ago, an offensive lineman, that I want to say came for a semester or two and then left because of I don't know if it was a family thing or academics or what it was. I cannot think of who that was.
Yeah, that's. I'm not. Nothing's popping up in the old memory bank on that one.
I cannot
Those
think
are
of
the
the
three
kid's
that I
name.
remember.
But,
yeah, those are the three that I remember.
Okay, not a lot. I mean, baseball, you had Patrick Raby. Keenan Kalinsky was from there, didn't play a ton, was a left-hander who maybe gave you half a dozen innings a year. Gosh, I know I'm leaving out some. Oh, Phil Pfeiffer, of course, was the highest probably regarded kid they got out of Knoxville from a baseball standpoint at the time. And I know I'm leaving out a couple others, but anyway.
God, we're 3 hours away, Chris. 3 hours exactly right now.
I'm here to get you through it. SR Kane says, list your difference makers and top performers on defense for the football team next year.
How many? Just list a few.
He didn't. He just said the difference makers.
Okay. All right. Well, I think one that I'll name is not that big of a stretch. I think Dial's got to be one of those guys. I mean, he's long and so talented, and when he gets that motor going, he's tough to block. There's no doubt about it. But I'm gonna throw another one out there for you. You ready for this? We don't talk about this guy enough, and I'm not sure why, Chris, because he as a freshman last year, he absolutely flashed. You know, he did, and that's Jalen Mahoney.
Yeah, I mean, Mahoney really graded well in Pro Football Focus. In fact, I think he was their top-rated DB. Now, I don't know how many snaps he took, but he graded very well. I mean, you didn't notice him a lot, which a lot of times for a DB is good, but yes.
And let me throw one more out there. I don't know who it's going to be, but I think one of our defensive tackles or another defensive lineman, doesn't have to be a DT, is going to step up. And I can't decide if I think it's going to be, because the other guys, you know, that'd be strictly on potential. I'm gonna say whoever takes their game to the next level between Rutger and Davion Davis.
Well, Rutger Reitmeyer had a really good practice, the last one that I saw. So the light was starting to click. I'll tell you another one. This is the classic Vandy redshirt's a kid, and then 4 years into it, they're a junior. 5 years into it, they're a senior. Whereas kids from Alabama, Florida, those places are playing as freshmen and leaving after their junior years. But that's where that development between the red shirt and the staying for an extra year comes in. Andre Mintz could be that guy because Mintz graded pretty well last year on Pro Football Focus.
Yeah, man, I like Andre, and I've been, he seems like a really dedicated dude, just following him on social media, and he really wants to get the most out of his playing time, and I like him. I think he's got a decent upside. I think Andre's a good answer, and then of course, another guy who, boy, I mean, he's got a lot of range. He's long, and he's made plays. He's made some plays in the past. I just need them to make more and on a consistent level. And that's Kenny Hebert.
Yeah, same thing. I guess Kenny will be a fifth-year outside backer. Like, here's the other thing too. I almost wonder if the outside or all the linebackers get better by default, just because the whole thing with Tarver never really seemed to work, and that's where they suffered the most, maybe, was at that position. And speaking of which, maybe Dimitri Moore.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we've always thought he was a talented kid coming in. It just hasn't played all that well. But now he's, fourth year on campus, third year as a starter, would have played as a true freshman, but redshirted.
Yeah, at least the third or fourth year. Yeah, no doubt.
I think he was an early enrollee. I want to say, and he played in part of a game as a true freshman. I mean, just a few snaps and then got hurt. Maybe he wasn't an early enrollee, but I thought he was. Either way.
Well, he came from the he came from Cedar Hill, if I remember correctly,
Right.
which is one of the big time programs in the state of Texas. That region out there, that's as good of the football you're going to find in the entire state right there. And physically, he looked the part, And hey, that would certainly be huge. But it just made me think, boy, they've pulled some really nice prospects out of the state of Texas lately. I just need them to kind of go to that next level. You know what I mean? It's great to get them out of there, but they hadn't quite panned out the way we want. And I think you and I both know I'm looking at a brother combination, from Rockwell. Maybe if they can take the next level. Physically as talented as it gets, but I don't know. I'm right there with you. I think Dimitri Moore and Kenny Hebert both fit that bill.
Next question. Based on what we know right now, what's your starting five in men's hoops next year?
Man. Okay. Scottie Pippen. Yeah. What's the chance Tyron Lawrence starts next year?
Don't know. Well, look, they've got DJ Harvey. Although I guess Harvey could be more of a three, but Dessou's kind of been a three.
Harvey's a three, though, right? Harvey's a three, though, right?
Well, you need a backup point guard, right?
You do.
And some of this is how your rotation is structured. So I would think that Lawrence comes off the bench for that reason.
Okay. I got no beef with that whatsoever. Cleavon. So Harvey, Cleavon, Pippen. Are we saying Dessou?
Well, here's what I wrote down. I've got 6 guys for 5 spots. You go Pippen, Harvey, Dessou, and Brown. I think probably for sure. And then I either went with Quentin Malloy-Brown or Max Evans, depending on how you play that. And again, that might depend on how you structure your rotation, because you want to get your best 5 starters to start the game mostly. That's usually the idea, but you also don't want a situation where you drop off and you bring in 2 or 3 guys and you put yourself at the mercy of a 10-2 run. So you might, if you're on the fence, you might, if you got 2 guys battling for a spot, you could conceivably bring the best guy off the bench just to guard against that. There's a lot of ways to think through it, but that to me, I think it's either Evans or Malloy-Brown, and they play different spots. But to me, those are probably the 6 guys for the 5 spots. And I'm guessing, they go Malloy-Brown and bring Evans off the bench. That's probably what I would do.
We're on the same exact page. That's what I was going to say too.
That means, Harvey, I think, am I dreaming he's more of a 3 than a 2, but I don't know how much it really matters, right?
No, it doesn't. I don't think, not today it doesn't. It may have 5 years ago. I don't think it does today.
Now, keep in mind, they don't let us into any practice. So this is where, if access is different, I get to watch those kids and have a better idea of what they really have. And to be honest with you, a lot of what is put out there, I don't know. The older I get, I need to see it with my eyes before I just believe practice buzz. But it's interesting and people like it and talk about it, but that makes it harder for me to know what they have because we're just not going to get to see it.
The order of this is a question for me. In regards to if we don't sign anybody else in this class, if it is strictly Lawrence, and Studi, and is it Ducepe? How do you say it?
I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine.
I'm talking about the kid that committed this week.
Yeah, when I read it, I think Oducipe.
Odesipe.
But I have
All
not
right, let's
seen
just
the
say those.
right.
Well, let's leave it at those three coming in. Let's just say that because I know they're hoping for Kerwin Walton, but I don't know how we feel about that, at least at this point. And then I know there's, Dylan Cardwell still a possibility. But let's just say the class is at these three. The likelihood of playing time or next year, I mean, think clearly would be Lawrence, number one. But what about these two? What do you know, who's more likely to see the floor?
What are my choices again?
Between the other two, Odesipe and Studi.
Oh, okay. Sorry, the internet connection is cut in and out. Oh man. I think Studi.
Just think the other one's too raw right now.
Well, Odesipe, from what I hear, is more like 6'7" than 6'9", and that's from someone who's seen him in person at a few games.
Okay.
And you still have Obina.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna argue with it. I know Lawrence is the right answer up top, but the other two, I mean, I wasn't really sure. All right, what else you got?
Let's see. 5-star Doherty says they think Coach Stephanie White is entering a make-or-break season next year.
Here's what I will say. I know she's killing it in filling out this roster right lately. First of all, I think Shakira Levy was a good get for her, and some of the transfers she's had lately and some of the players she's picked up. She picked up some big time players. I think she's got a chance to turn it around. But as far as make or break, man, how about I open up that can of worms? Probably not, to be real honest with you. No, I'd say no. I mean, because if she's still there with the results that we've seen so far, I mean, and then the other side of things is do you hear a large groundswell banging for her job? I mean, other than the message board, because I mean, there's just not that much interest. I don't think there's enough interest in it right now as a program for it to matter, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm not doing a great job of it, but I think you understand where I'm coming from. I just don't think there's enough. I think there's enough indifference that, whether she wins 4 or 5 games in the conference, or maybe they give her a year or two to see how some of these players she's brought in pans out. I don't know.
Well, first of all, and Melanie Balcom started it, she has destroyed almost all interest in that program. So that's number one. Number two, you got budget cuts. So I think she got a 6-year deal. That is what I think the Indy Star had reported when she signed the contract. This will be 5. I cannot see the school wanting to pay 2 people to coach, one being her buyout, with budget cuts coming, which we're going to hit athletics, because I can't imagine they're going to say, hey, we're going to cut everybody else's budget, but not yours. So that's number 2. Number 3, assuming Candace Lee gets the AD job, which I would guess is going to happen, but nobody's sure, and so that's not me reporting. Candace is the one that hired her. Is Candace going to be the one to fire her early? I doubt it. Number 4, I think the school is more interested in her politics than her win-loss record. So I think, to me, I look at it and I think everything's stacked against it. Plus, Vanderbilt can always make an excuse for somebody. And you look at her recruiting and they'll say, well, let's give her a chance with her players and this terrific class she's bringing in. So she's got, on top of everything else, the built-in cop-out.
Yeah.
Hey, your connection went bad again. I'm just going to go ahead and go to the next question and hope you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Oh, good. Utah Ozzy says, list your top 3 relief pitchers in Vandy history. For me, that one's really easy, but I'll give you a shot first.
I'm sorry, the top what?
Top 3 relief pitchers.
for Vanderbilt of all time?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I can do this. I'll probably, I'm terrible at the baseball side of things. So I'll do this, and don't mock me if I just get it horribly wrong, Chris. Just tell me, no, you're wrong, and here's why. I'm gonna go with Casey Weathers. I got to throw my boy Tyler in there. Tyler Brown. Tyler Brown's got to be in there. Tyler Brown, Casey Weathers, and Brian Miller.
Those are my three, and it's not even close.
Did I get it right?
You did. Miller, did you know Miller is their all-time saves leader?
I can see that.
Yeah.
How many have?
27, I think.
Nice. Yeah. I got that right.
You did. You nailed it. I mean, it's not – to me, those three are head and shoulders above the field. I mean, the other guys you would have in there, if you want to go back to right when Corbin got there, Ryan Rote would be in there. Now, I thought that Russell Brewer had a really nice career. Statistically, it was really good. In fact, I was really thinking about putting him in the Vandy Sports 100. I did not. Our buddy Mitch Light kind of talked me out of that, and I think Mitch had some good reasons. But Russ had a nice career, but I think SEC play was a little bit shaky. And Navery Moore had a nice 2011, but he didn't get like a ton of innings. That team just blew people out of the water. And
Navery was a BGA guy, right?
Navery was a very highly rated BGA kid, yes.
Yeah, that's right. I remember Navery had a big arm. He had some injuries or something like that kind of kept him from reaching that max ability.
I want to say he redshirted his first year on campus due to injury, but I wouldn't swear by it. I think he had Tommy John in or after high school. Or maybe he missed his senior year, and I don't remember now. But, yeah, I do think an injury was in there somewhere.
Wow. Hey, by the way, just check this out. This just came across. I don't know if you saw this, Chris. Todd McShay is not going to be a part of the broadcast tonight because he's recovering from coronavirus.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they just put that out there. Yeah.
Speedy recovery to him.
All right. So, hey, by the way, Mitch Light, if you listen to this one, I got all three right. So proud of me.
Proud of you, too.
Thank you. My family's very proud.
Okay, Ann Arbor says, make a list of 3 to 5 top Vanderbilt athletes who didn't play men's basketball, football, or baseball. Who would you pick since 03 who's not currently on a roster at VU? He says, in particular order, he would suggest Brant Snedeker, Simone Charlie, and Astra Sharma. Snedeker for sure. And look, I barely follow those sports, so Simone Charlie's name came up a lot. Had another track and field girl, didn't they, that was really good? Who am I thinking of?
Chris, come on. I remember her. Of course, Brant. There's no way I can finish this list. I'm sorry. I can't. I don't know. I plead utter ignorance. I pull for us and all that other stuff, but I don't watch it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm qualified to make that judgment.
Yeah,
Snedeker's an easy one.
I couldn't possibly. Yeah.
Vandy Fitz says, Seabass, if you were the ESPN or SEC Network programming director, what would you have programmed to fill our COVID days? Real answer, or for the whole viewing public, not just Vandy and Colts.
I watch more than just my teams. I promise. It's a great question. Bad questions. It's not an impossible task, but how long can you watch game replays? Now, I know a lot of people are like the huge games and all this other stuff. For me, if I'm going to watch a game, it's probably going to be from last year. I'm not big in going back to 1978 and watching a football game. It's not that I don't care. It's just not my thing. I personally would have done a lot of draft talk because that is the centralized sport event going on right now for basically the entire country right now. So I would have had a lot of that going on, game replays. You know me, Chris, I'm not into a lot of fluff. And I'm not a big, 30 for 30 behind the scenes, how this guy feels about this emotionally. That's not really my thing. But to try to appeal to as many people as I possibly could, and especially knowing that you got a whole lot of people at home that are not really just as much avid sports fans, but it's an opportunity to cultivate some people that you may not normally be able to get their eyeballs on your program. But because everybody's home, that would change a little. So I would probably do things like that and do 30 for 30s and that other stuff. If I'm the program director, I'd hate to have to do it as one of the hosts or analysts. That would kill me. But I would do that to try to appeal to some eyes that I didn't already have. What do you think about that? What would you do?
I'm not watching much SEC Network right now. I mean, almost not at all. Now, my son has got it on. My son is constantly watching replays of all kinds of games, especially football. He's been watching some baseball too. I wonder if I'm the network, I'm asking schools to really cooperate. And I'm saying, bring us stuff out of your vaults that we don't have, like bowl games from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe. And this is part of my assumption, okay? I'm presuming that if you're the guy that is going to watch, the 2005 Sugar Bowl over again, you probably already watched it or seen it on YouTube. I'm going to try to work with schools and get some original material that you haven't aired because you just had never been through something like this. And I think that's one place that I might start.
Yeah, I mean, those are good directions to go to because, again, clearly a lot of these things that David is seeing, he is seeing for the very first time, and some huge games and going far back. I think that'd be great. That's one of the better questions I've ever seen on this mailbag, and it's a hard one to answer.
You know what else I'm pulling out? I'm pulling out a lot of rivalry games. I'm thinking any Alabama-Auburn game that I have not shown that's a decent game at all, I'm going to pull out on the football side. I think 82 Vandy Tennessee game was one I'd like to see again. Just to do, I don't know that I've ever gone back and watched that whole game again. It's probably out there, so maybe it defeats the purpose because what I just said is games that maybe people aren't going to find already. But I'm looking at stuff like that. Now, I'm opposite of you. I really think I don't really care about Joe said this and Joe said that and all the stuff that you talked about and what's this guy's opinion on that. But what I do think ESPN has done a fantastic job of is it's 30 for 30s. In fact, I've got the box set of the first two seasons it did. So I think a really well done 30 for 30, which of course you can't really produce any more of those right now, but that kind of programming has always appealed to me. It's something that's really well done.
Hey, it's whatever you like. For me, my eyes, I'm about the game. I'm about the game itself. The underlining things, I'm not saying I don't care about, but I don't care about. I just don't. Now look, it's cool to hear how somebody made it through some hard times and all these other things, and that's fine. But for me, I'm all about the game. So that's why, and that's why things like the draft and recruiting appeal to me so much. Prospecting, that type of deal. That is what I sink my time into. But I get that not everybody's like that, and a lot of people like the human interest stuff and the storylines. I'm not a storyline guy. I'm not interested in the storylines.
The other thing, here's a few other things that I've thought about. I think on the pro side, I try to find a lot of classic 80s NBA games. Bird, Johnston, Magic. I think those, to me, almost never get old, and that's a personal thing. But a lot of us grew up in that era, and that's how we remember pro basketball. And I think I'm sure they do some of this stuff already. I'm also thinking from a basketball standpoint, I'm trying to pull out as many really good NCAA tournament games, especially in March and April, as I can. And I think they've done some of that, but in fact, I know they have because you see it on Twitter and people tweeting about it left and right. But to me, that's a good programming choice. I'll tell you another one, and I'll pull this one out of left field. A couple of USFL games from back in the day with Herschel Walker and those guys and Flutie would be interesting.
The New Jersey Generals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it just depends on who you are. You know, those are cool, they're fine, but especially if I know the outcome. Chris, I told you, if I'm recording something and on the way home I hear the final score, I'm not even going to go home and watch it, unless it's Vanderbilt or something like that, because I need to see just who's doing what. But if I know the outcome, I can't really watch it.
Do you know what I have watched more than anything since the quarantine?
Designing women.
Close. Sports related. I've watched this more than anything else that I've watched since we've had the quarantine.
The Fabulous Sports Babe.
No, but you know what? I'm glad you said that. She had some good shows on radio. That'd be interesting to find those again.
She was okay.
Although sports talk radio shows from 20 years ago, that doesn't have a lot of appeal. But this is TV only.
Oh, what you've been watching? I couldn't even begin. What you got?
I have binged on old This Week in Baseballs with Mel Allen from the 70s and 80s.
Okay, now we can be friends.
And I'm surprised you didn't. You could have figured that out knowing me, knowing that I'm a baseball guy first.
Yeah, that I can ride with. Yes, 100% agree.
I will tell you another thing, and I've done these occasionally on YouTube, is I've gone back and watched some of the old 70s and early 80s pregame NFL shows with Jimmy the Greek and Phyllis George and Irv Cross and all those folks that did it back then. That I get a kick out of watching those too.
I wouldn't mind going back to that. I'm not a real big fan of today's, but man, when when those were on, Chris, is when I used to sit in front of the television set about 3 feet from my house, 3 feet from the TV. The kind where you at that age were the remote. You know what I'm talking about. Get up and turn the channel and just sit there and watch stuff like that. Just, man, those pre-games, man. Or when you were a kid, you wanted to stay up and you asked, they were never going to let you stay up the whole night to watch Monday Night Football, the whole game. You had to go to bed. But the one thing you begged for was, please let me watch the halftime show when they do the scores, the highlights from the day before. And that was what, Howard Cosell, right?
Yeah, I believe it was.
Let me stay up long enough to watch the highlights from the night before. If I can do that, I'll be fine because, you're 8 years old and you're probably not going to be able to stay up and watch the rest of the game and fall asleep. But I had to stay up long enough to watch those highlights.
Another oldie but goodie is, I think it was the George Michael Sports Machine.
Yeah.
That was a Sunday night thing, I think. Is that right?
I think that's right. Yeah. You're taking me back. I'm not a big back in the day guy, but I like what you're doing.
Oh, I'm about as nostalgic as it comes.
Yeah, not me. I'm about what's going on right now. But I mean, it's like I said, it's just who you are. It's whatever you dig.
Well, I'm hoping I'm going to make a memory with my son tonight because he's been talking about the draft every day for the last week and begging to watch it. My wife is going to let him stay up and watch it with me tonight. I think she's going to give him an hour or two. I'm sure he's going to lobby for more. But he is all over this draft, man, and he just turned 6.
Man, I love that kid. I love that kid. What did you told me? Tell me what he said. He asked Bella a question or something about a player the other night, didn't he?
Yeah, I'm standing in our dining room, and I overhear him in the kitchen. He says, Bella, what do you think about Justin Herbert?
I mean, that is so fantastic, man. You know what that's called? That's called great parenting.
This one and I are going to get along so well. He is, I don't remember how this came up. He was watching the SEC tournament. I don't think it was even a Vanderbilt game. I think it was just one from last year. And I said, hey, buddy, one of these days I'll take you to that. He got really excited. He said, will you take...
He went and got dressed.
He said, will you take me next year? I said, well, your mom and I will have to talk about that, but...
Well, hey, I get it, because when I was about 8 years old, my first year of football, I think our first game was scheduled for 9:00 in the morning. And at 5:30, I had my entire uniform on, my helmet on, chin strap buckled, and mouthpiece in at 5:30 in the morning.
Do you remember the first sporting events you ever saw? Like, not ones you played in, but like games that your parents or an uncle or someone took you to?
Oh, Chris, you have to understand, I lived in Houston, Texas, and my family used to take me to, especially my grandparents used to take me to Astros games, man, and I can still remember meeting J.R. Richards, and man, you're talking about Joe Sambito and Nolan Ryan, and my grandparents knew Elvin Hayes, so I got to meet them. I got to meet Elvin Hayes and Moses Malone. I got to go to sporting events as a little kid. So I would have to say I remember those. But I guess the thing that I remember the most, probably the first thing I remember, was getting to go on the field and meet Ray Knight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Ray Knight. Yeah, I get out there standing, face to face. This little boy to meeting. I met Ray Knight and Alan Ashby, and I want to say Enos Cabell. No, Cesar Cedeno. Cesar Cedeno, and I was a kid, and of course I'm standing there, and the Astrodome is the biggest place in the entire world, and I'm just looking it up, and there's my heroes, and they weren't even my team, but I got a chance early, and then of course I got to go to the games, and Earl Campbell and Dan Pastorini and all those guys, Billy White Shoes Johnson. So I got an opportunity to do that at a young age, but I'll give you $46,000 if you can tell me the two teams playing in the very first college football game I ever went to.
Oh, boy.
I'll give you one clue.
Okay.
Vanderbilt, they're both Division I. And Vanderbilt is better than both of them in football.
North Texas and Texas State.
No, but that's a fair guess. No, it was, you got to remember something. I grew up in Houston. It was Rice. Rice was at home, and they were taking on Tulane.
Yeah.
Yep. First football game I ever went to, college-wise, was Rice and Tulane.
Although, was Vandy better than Tulane last year?
Not last year, probably not. But I would say, I mean, there's no debating that. Let's just go over the last 10 years at least. Clearly better. And I'll just say this: I probably still would have taken Vanderbilt last year. I have to ask myself this: do I think that Tulane would have beaten a 5-1 Missouri team? I understand Missouri played like crap. But you know what? We played well that game and played hard and made plays when we had to. I don't think Tulane wins that game.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't have lost 34-10 to UNLV either.
That's a fair point, but mine was too.
Yes, it was. And with that, my children are invading my home office and asking questions about bike riding and such, so I think I'm going to go and attend to them. Tell people where they can find your show and where they can find you on Twitter, please.
At Cheap Seats Bass, you can find my show on 101.5 FM in Jackson, Tennessee, 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, though tonight. I'm only going to 7. I'm cashing out, letting my buddy of mine finish the show, and I'm be square front of this TV, son. You know what it is.
Enjoy your evening.
Thank you. You too.
He is Seabass. I'm Chris Lee. Thank you for listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast.